When dust emits, we find that it dissipates fairly quickly. It settles back down to the ground because of gravity, and dust being stirred up by the environment tends not to travel very far because it has a low mass and a high resistance to movement. So what I'm going to do is set a limit on the amount of time that these particles can live, and then I'm going to delete the particles based on the amount of time that I allow for them to live. And of course, we'd probably want to randomize that as well. Now, giving the particles an age limit, a length that they can live in seconds or in frames, is an attribute that usually is set on the emission compound. Again, we just want to initialize particle age limit and then later on delete it using a compound plugged into the terminal port of the ice tree. So if we look under the particle tasks, task particles, and we look under the list of tools called setters, we're allowed to set a number of attributes, and the top attribute that we can set is the particle age limit. Now, as I mentioned before, you can't set an age limit without deleting it. Setting is literally setting a value. What you do with that value is completely up to you. So set particle age limit could be plugged in as an animated effect into the terminal port of the ice tree, or again can be plugged into the execute on emit 1, so the value is initialized on frame 2. I'll use the output of the set particle age limit execute and plug it into the execute on emit of the emit splash from surface collision. I'm going to initialize the age limit to be a very small amount, maybe 0.5 of a second. Again, we can use seconds or frames with this particular tool. If I hit play, nothing will happen because, again, I've set the age limit and nothing more. So once I set the age limit, I'm likely going to want to delete the particles. Again, I tend to use the age limit quite a bit, so I'm going to right-click and add it to my favorites folder. And if I look under deleting particles, I have the opportunity to delete particles at their age limit, by volume, or I can use a simple delete particles node in combination with a state system or some kind of a condition. So I'll drag and drop the delete particle at age limit compound into my graph. And I'm going to want to delete the particles before the simulate particles. Again, the simulate particles is typically the last compound that's evaluated, or the last node that's evaluated in the ice tree stack. So I'll right-click on port 1 and insert a port after it. I'll likely have some more functionality built into this ice tree, so I can even take port 3 and insert a port before. So I have a couple of extra empty ports that I can plug into. If I hit play now, and again, just before I do that, I'm also going to change the shape of the particles so they're a little easier to see. I'm going to double click on the emit splash from surface collision. You'll notice it's a little different than the emit from surface compound. I can still set the shape of the particles. They are set to a spherical shape. And I'm going to increase the size just a tad, so maybe to 0.5. If I hit play now, again, things start to look a little better. We're getting particles emitted, and they die off fairly quickly. If I randomize the particle age limit, we can get a bit more chaos and a bit more unpredictability so that particles are dying at different times. If our age limit is 0.5, we can set a randomize on that value by looking under random. And we can randomize the age limit according to a min-max range. So randomize value by range. And we'll plug the output of the value into the input of the age limit, both scalar values. If I double click on the randomized value by range, I can set the youngest particle, or the particle that will die earliest, at let's say 0.35 seconds, and the max value at perhaps 0.6. This is not an animated effect, so, and again it won't be because I'm plugging it into the execute on emit of an emission compound, but now I get a little bit more breakup in the movement. So there's still a number of things to solve. We need to deal with the color, and we still need to deal with the shape. The particles should emit upwards and drift back a little bit, perhaps depending on wind. There's some particles that are colliding below the surface, which we really don't need.